Next week is just special. You being there would ruin that. That's what my mom said, her tone gentle, like she was doing me a kindness by excluding me. My dad added, "You've changed, Claire. You don't fit anymore." And in that moment, I realized I was no longer considered family, just the woman who signed the checks. They didn't invite me to the dream vacation through Italy. Not me. Not my daughter Emma. Not my son Nolan. But they used my money to fund it, every hotel, every flight, every private tour. And when I found out, they didn't apologize. They told me my presence would ruin it. So I said nothing. I smiled, nodded, and went home to burn it all down. Every booking, canceled. Every pass, locked. And as they stood at the airport with their designer bags and fake smiles, I watched from my kitchen, calm, certain. They had erased me? So I erased their trip. Rachel must have forwarded it without thinking, probably meant to send it to Mark or Mom. I was scrolling through messages while Emma painted in the sunroom, and Nolan napped beside me, when I saw it. Subject line: Final itinerary. Florence, Rome, Amalfi. I opened it, curious, and then the color drained from my face. The names listed: Mom, Dad, Rachel, Mark, their 2 kids. That was it. No Claire, no Emma, no Nolan. Just 6 names, 6 people who now apparently defined family. And a perfect trip planned to the last luxurious detail. 5-star hotel in Florence with rooftop dining. Guided Colosseum tour. Amalfi boat cruise. Private pasta-making class. Vineyard dinner in Tuscany. It was stunning. It was curated. It was paid for with my money. 6 months ago, at Sunday dinner, Mom had looked across the table and said, "I've always dreamed of taking the family to Europe while the kids are still young." She said Rachel and Mark were strapped for cash. She asked me to help cover the upfront costs. "You can afford it now, honey. With that new consulting contract, this would mean everything to us." I didn't even hesitate. I wired the funds that same week. I thought I was helping create a memory for everyone, including Emma and Nolan. I thought we'd be strolling cobblestone streets together, taking pictures with gelato-stained lips and sun-kissed shoulders. Turns out, I was just the bank. Not even a courtesy mention. Not a placeholder invitation. Not a single line in the itinerary that said, "Plus Claire, kids." I waited, rereading the file over and over again, hoping I'd missed something. Maybe we were in a second wave? Maybe I'd hear from Rachel tomorrow? But the silence that followed was louder than any explanation. And it said, "You don't belong." I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I sat very still, listening to my children's laughter float in from the hallway. And something inside me shifted, not with fire, but with ice. That night, I didn't call anyone. I didn't ask why. I simply watched their betrayal bloom into a blueprint. One where they'd pose on balconies I'd paid for, drink wines I'd funded, toast to a tight-knit family I was no longer part of. And that's when I made my decision. If I was never meant to be part of the picture, then I'd make sure they didn't get to take the trip. Not on my dime. Not on my silence. I waited for Sunday. Our traditional family dinner, always the same. Mom's baked rigatoni, Dad's monotone golf recap, Rachel's fake laugh storytelling about PTA drama, and Mark scrolling his phone like being present was optional. Only this time, I was listening for what they wouldn't say. They were all seated when I arrived with Emma and Nolan. Mom kissed the kids, complimented Emma's dress. No tension, no guilt, no trace of what they'd done. Dinner unfolded like a script they'd rehearsed. But I had my own line ready. As I passed the salad bowl, I said casually, "Italy's beautiful this time of year, isn't it? Especially Florence." Then I sipped my wine. The silence that followed was thick. Everyone froze, just for a second. Mom set down the bread basket. Rachel blinked too slowly. Mark reached for his water glass like it was suddenly interesting. Then Mom looked me in the eye and said, softly, "Next week is just Special. We didn't think it would be right to bring any extra stress. My stress. My children. My existence. Dad leaned back, arms folded. You've changed, Claire. It's like you don't get us anymore. Rachel just sat there, chewing, not meeting my gaze. No one said, we meant to include you. No one said, you helped make this happen. No one said, I'm sorry. They had prepared for this moment, planned their excuses like they planned the trip. I looked down at my plate, took a breath, then gently lifted my fork and tapped it against my glass. Clink. Just once. Duly noted. I smiled, not bitterly, not theatrically, just enough. And in that soundlight, almost polite, they missed the thunder that followed. I didn't argue, didn't plead, didn't ask why. I finished my wine, helped my kids into their coats, and said thank you for dinner. The quiet ride home was filled with Nolan humming to himself in the back seat and Emma talking about her science project. They didn't know what had just happened. Didn't see the door that had closed behind us. But I did. And as I tucked them into bed, brushed Emma's hair back and kissed Nolan's forehead, I made a promise to myself. They would never sit across from people who could look them in the eye and pretend they didn't matter. Not again. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk with the itinerary open, the receipts lined up. Every booking, every charge, every confirmation. All in my name. They hadn't even tried to hide it. Their arrogance was their weakness. And my silence? That was just the mask I wore, before the storm. I didn't rush. That would have been too kind. Instead, I made tea, turned on a playlist Emma had made for our girls' mornings, and sat down with my laptop. Every login, every booking, every invoice. Still in my name, still charged to my card. I started with the flights. 3 first-class reservations on a direct flight from LAX to Rome. Gone with a single click. Refund pending. Reimbursement to me. Next, the hotels. 2 suites in Florence, 3 nights each. Luxury property with rooftop spa, bottle service, and personal concierge. Cancelled. Confirmation email deleted. New password set. The vineyard tour? The Amalfi boat cruise? The high-speed rail passes between cities? Reversed. Flagged. Refunded. It wasn't rage. It was arithmetic. Rachel once said I never made a scene. She was right. I still didn't. I simply made them disappear. Then I logged into the family travel portal, the one I had set up months ago. I changed the password, removed their email access, locked the digital passes, deactivated the QR codes, called the car service company and reported their names as unauthorized riders. By the time I shut my laptop, it was nearly 3 a.m. The only sound was the faint click of the dishwasher finishing its final cycle. I slept like a stone. The next morning, I made pancakes with Nolan. Emma helped me pack up some clothes for her school's donation drive. It was peaceful, intentional, mine. At exactly 7:50, 8 a.m., my phone buzzed. Text from Mark. Unblock the account. Now. I stared at it. Smiled. Replied. Sorry. I guess I'm just too different now. Then came the cascade. Mom. Claire. What did you do? Rachel. Screenshot of her crying daughter with the message. You're being cruel. The kids were excited. They don't deserve this. But my kids didn't deserve to be erased either. They wanted to define family without me? Fine. They could experience it without me, too. No 5-star suite. No pasta-making class. No curated vineyard experience. Just the airport. Just the realization. Just the truth. I knew exactly what time their flight was scheduled to depart. 6:10 p.m. And at 6:12, I got the next text. From Rachel. Why are we being denied boarding? Then Mark. Did you cancel the flights? Then the calls. Ignored. I pictured them at the gate. Designer luggage, matching travel outfits, mom barking at an airline agent, dad pulling out a credit card that wouldn't work for group reservations that no longer existed, Rachel probably panicking, Mark feigning calm. And me? I was sitting in our kitchen, helping Emma make pizza dough from scratch, watching Nolan sprinkle way too much cheese. I didn't tell them anything. Let the silence explain. They erased us with a sentence. I returned the favor with a keystroke. By Sunday, they were back. Less than 48 hours after they were supposed to be walking the streets of Florence. No photos, no airport selfies, no Ciao Bella captions. Just silence. And a silver SUV sitting in their driveway like a monument to defeat. At 3:47 p.m., my doorbell rang. It was Mom. No makeup. Hair tied back. Still wearing travel leggings and that "I'm not here to fight" expression she thought made her look reasonable. She didn't apologize. Didn't ask to come in. She just said, "All right, you made your point." Then she launched into a monologue about how these kinds of stunts drive wedges in families, how ruining a trip doesn't fix feeling excluded, and finally, almost comically, "Anyway, I wanted to ask you about the backyard. The contractor is still scheduled for next month, and we don't want to lose the date. Your dad said you might be able to help with the deposit." I nearly laughed. She still thought the game was salvageable. That if she played the guilt-flavored cards just right, I'd fold and come back to the table. I smiled. "Let me check my accounts," I said. "I'll let you know by the end of the week." She left satisfied. She thought she'd reopen the door. But she didn't realize that door wasn't locked, it was gone. Over the next week, they trickled back in. Rachel texted like she was emailing a coworker. "Hey, Mom said you were thinking about helping with the backyard. Let us know so we can confirm with the contractor." No warmth, no apology. Just the familiar family tone I'd known all my life, the one they used when they needed something. I waited. Hours. Then days. "Still checking a few things," I replied. "We'll confirm soon." That soon turned into Friday, then Saturday, then nothing. By Monday, Dad called. I watched his name flash across my screen. Didn't answer. His follow-up text was almost sweet in its performance. "We're not trying to pressure you, just need to know what's happening so we can plan." I wrote back. "Totally get it. Should have an answer soon." And just like that, the power shifted. The people who once treated me as disposable now wait anxiously for a deposit. The ones who excluded my children from a trip were now begging for help with their lawn. I sent vague responses, polite delays, played their own game with a sharper blade. Thanksgiving crept closer. Normally, I'd get a group text from Mom, "Who's bringing what?" Or a passive-aggressive reminder from Rachel, "Please RSVP this year, Claire." This time? Nothing. No invite, no mention, no expectation. It was the first time in my life I wasn't invited. I didn't text first. Didn't ask if we were still doing potluck. Didn't pretend I wasn't waiting. I waited in silence. The day before Thanksgiving, I saw Iden Rachel's Instagram. A table for 10. Pumpkin place cards, napkins folded into swans. She captioned it, "Grateful for the real ones." Every chair filled, every name handwritten. But not mine. Not Emma. Not Nolan. There was no confusion, no oversight. This wasn't about misunderstanding. It was erasure, intentional and complete. We made our own dinner. Emma voted for waffles. Nolan wanted mac and cheese. So that's what we made, messy, buttery, perfect. We ate on the couch, watched old Christmas movies. And I laughed so hard I actually forgot what day it was. Until a few days later, when I saw Erica in the grocery store parking lot. She gave me the same sheepish smile, then asked, "They didn't invite you, did they?" I shook my head. "First time." She nodded. Rachel told Grandma it was just simpler this way. Less tension. Less tension. like my children and I were static in the background of their carefully composed lives. Not people, just problems. Christmas came. I didn't bother checking my phone. But a neighbor sent me a screenshot of Rachel's holiday post. The family in matching pajamas. 5 stockings hung above the fireplace. Hot cocoa, forced smiles. I zoomed in, looked for our names. There weren't any. No, Emma. No, Nolan. Not even a stray Claire, tucked in the corner out of politeness. And for the first time, it didn't break me. It froze something inside me. Not with sadness, but with clarity. They weren't just excluding me anymore. They were deleting me. I stared at the photo and whispered, "Then let's see how it feels when the silence goes both ways." It was mid-January when it came. A plain envelope, no return address, just my name Claire written in my mother's handwriting. Shaky, like even her pen had doubts. I stood in the kitchen for a while, just staring at it, could have thrown it away. But curiosity has always been my most dangerous habit. Inside was a folded letter and a check. 2 paragraphs. That's all she wrote. The first, "We're reaching out to repair what's left." The second, "Enclosed is your share of the Italy trip, since you didn't attend." The check was for $3,600. I laughed out loud. Not because of the number though, yes, it was insulting, but because they still thought this was about money. Like returning my investment could somehow refund my children's absence from their memory. As if a check could scrub out what it felt like to be told, "You being there would ruin it." I didn't cash it. I stuck it to the fridge with a magnet, next to Nolan's snowman drawing and Emma's glittery Happy New Year card. 3 days later, I got a message from Mark. "We need to talk." I ignored it. Then Rachel texted, "Grandma's in the hospital. She's been asking for you." I froze. Grandma? She hadn't been mentioned once in this whole mess. She lived alone in Sacramento, hadn't traveled in years. She was the only one who ever sent Emma and Nolan birthday cards without being reminded. She'd stayed out of the family drama. Until now. I called the hospital and confirmed it was true. Nothing life-threatening, mild heart issue, just observation. But she'd asked for me, twice. So I drove up that night. When I walked into the room, she looked up from her pillow and smiled. Like I hadn't missed a single holiday. Like I hadn't been scrubbed from the family album. "Claire," she said softly. "You okay, honey?" I pulled a chair closer. And for the first time since this all began, I told someone everything. Not angrily. Not bitterly. Just, plainly. How they asked me to fund a dream trip. How I said yes. How they planned everything behind my back. How they excluded not just me, but Emma and Nolan. How, when I confronted them, they told me my presence would ruin it. She listened, without interrupting. When I was done, she closed her eyes, exhaled, and said, "That's not what they told me." I looked at her. "They said you refused to go, that you got angry and canceled everything out of spite." I shook my head slowly. "That's not even close to the truth." She opened her eyes again. And in that moment, I saw the sadness there. "I'm so sorry, Claire. I don't know what's wrong with them." That was all I needed to hear. But the fallout came quickly. Less than an hour after I left the hospital, my phone buzzed again. "Mom, did you tell Grandma some twisted version of what happened?" Rachel. "She's old, Claire. She doesn't need stress like this." Mark. "You're turning people against their own family. This is toxic behavior." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because they weren't upset that I told Grandma. They were scared that someone finally believed me. That their version of the story wasn't the only one anymore. That I'd stopped playing quietly and started telling the truth. The day after Grandma and I spoke, I got a group text. From Mom, Rachel, Mark, Dad. It said, "Effective immediately, we'd like to move forward with more transparency and unity. We're hoping you'll be part of some future plans. Let's reconnect soon." No apology, no admission. Just repositioning. A subtle pivot. A soft rebranding. Suddenly, I wasn't unstable or toxic. I was valuable again. Useful. The next day, Rachel followed up with a text of her own. Hey, I've been thinking. Maybe we could all meet up for coffee next week? Just talk, no pressure. She even added a heart emoji. The same woman who erased my daughter's name from a Christmas stocking now wanted a latte and a chat. I agreed. Told her Tuesday morning at 10 worked great. She responded within seconds. Yay, I'll buy. But Tuesday came, and at 9:41 a.m., I sent. Sorry. Last-minute work meeting. Can we reschedule? She replied, totally understand. Let's touch base later this week. We didn't. 2 days later, Mom messaged, would you be able to pitch in a little for gravel delivery? It's just $300 to cover the shortfall. I said, let me check some things. I'll circle back. I didn't. Saturday. Dad texted about firewood for winter. Said the supplier raised prices. I replied, send me the link. I'll look into it. He did. I didn't. And every time they followed up, I mirrored their old tone perfectly. Polite but empty. Kind but non-committal. Familiar but distant. I became them. And it worked better than I expected. Rachel went quiet first. No more heart emojis. No check-ins. No coffee soon? Texts. Then Mom's messages got shorter. Then spaced out. Then stopped altogether. Mark unfollowed me on Instagram. A man who once sent me 10 texts in a row about vineyard bookings now couldn't stand the silence he used to weaponize. Dad didn't send his usual, happy birthday to my favorite people, family group text in February. That one surprised me. He hadn't missed it in 10 years. But I hadn't done anything wrong. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't insulted anyone. I hadn't even said no. I'd just become them. All promises, no action. All smiles, no follow-through. All family, no warmth. And now, for the first time in their lives, they were experiencing what it felt like to be on the outside. The holidays were gone. The trip was gone. The money was off the table. And I was no longer the bank, the fixer, the fallback. I was something far more dangerous. Independent. February passed in silence. Then, one morning, an envelope arrived. No stamp, no return address. Just Claire, in my mom's handwriting wobblier than before. Inside, a folded note. The check I'd pinned to my fridge, returned. A message. We're hoping to reset. Your father and I are thinking of selling the house. The proceeds might go into a shared family account for future needs. We'd like you to be part of that vision. There it was again. That same tone. Soft coercion wrapped in legacy talk. A ribbon tied around manipulation. I didn't respond. But 2 days later, Rachel called. For once, no text and actual voice call. I let it go to voicemail. She sounded chipper, like we were long-lost sisters catching up. The kids miss Emma and Nolan. I've been thinking about what you said. Maybe it's time for a real reset. Let's meet soon. No apology, not even a half-hearted one. Then the twist. Mom and Dad are serious about selling the house. We were thinking the money could help build something future, focused for all of us. Would love your input, and your help setting it up. I just sat there, listening to the words they'd so carefully chosen. Words that weren't about repair. Just positioning. They didn't want me back. They wanted access. The next morning, I sealed the check back in the same envelope and dropped it in a mailbox. No note. No message. No drama. That was the end. Not with a bang. Not with an argument. Just a quiet, final severing of a contract I never signed but always felt bound to. Weeks passed. No response. The group thread went dark. No messages, no memes, no fake brunch photos. Birthdays came and went, nothing. Erica messaged me one day. They sold the house, moved somewhere smaller outside the city. No invite sent your way, I assume? I smiled. Nope, not this time. And I didn't want one. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for permission to feel like I belonged. I was living a life that felt like mine. That spring, I took Emma and Nolan on a road trip up the coast. We stopped in Monterey, collected sea glass, stayed at a tiny bee with squeaky floors and warm biscuits. There were no matching outfits. No perfect photos. But the laughter? It was real. And so was the freedom. I could have bought them a mansion. Funded 5 more Italy trips. But I didn't. Instead, I invested in something my family never could give me: peace without performance. They cut me out to protect their comfort. I stayed out to protect my children. And in doing so, I learned that silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes, it's the last word.